Eli Lilly hits $1 trillion, so is healthcare the best way to diversify away from tech? This is Sectors Up Close, and we're talking healthcare. On Friday, Eli Lilly became the first drug maker to reach $1 trillion valuation. Powerhouse weight loss drugs Mounjaro and Zepbound have sent that stock up 35% this year as demand surged. Its big Danish rival Novo Nordisk is a cautionary tale for investors, though. That stock has lost over half its value year to date after Eli Lilly conquered the US market in obesity drugs. This morning it fell further after it reported a key Alzheimer's drug trial missed the target. So how can investors choose the right healthcare name to bet on? Peter Andersen is CIO at Andersen Capital Management. Peter, everything this year has been about tech, but if you want to get away from the AI story, why pick healthcare?
Well, first off, it is such a welcome shift in the narrative, too, because we have spent all our energy talking about artificial intelligence, and I do think the market is rather fatigued with that. When it comes to healthcare, of course, you're placing bets on the individual drugs that are being developed. So there is some risk with that, as you mentioned on the opening of this story, winners and losers. However, we do know that AI spending can turn off quickly if budgets tighten, but people don't stop managing diabetes or obesity and other frailties. So because of that, we often recommend that you have a basket of healthcare stocks rather than take individual bets. You can have tremendous winners, but you can also have tremendous losers if you are just focusing on, say, a single one or two stocks.
Absolutely. So given that trial drugs and treatments often fail, how can investors pick a success in this sector?
Yes, well, the first thing is go out and get yourself a PhD in biology. But of course, most of us can't do that. And it requires very technical expertise, similar to perhaps even AI, or maybe even more specialized expertise. So because of that, you can take a look at a basket of these stocks and, for instance, look at the top producers and say, maybe I should own, since I don't have a PhD in biology or biochemistry, maybe I look at some of the best performers and the ones that have the most promising products. However, we just saw today in the headlines, for instance, that some of these products failed miserably in trials, and then the stock really does take a beating. So because of that, it's a cautionary tale, and I do think if you have a basket of these, it's probably the better way to go.
Well, the obesity drug wars, Eli Lilly versus Novo Nordisk, show it's not enough to have a drug or a treatment that works and a big market. You also have to beat your rival. So what does Eli Lilly's victory in that market tell investors?
Well, it tells us, number one, that they probably have the better research teams, and they also have a remarkable marketing strategy. So those two winning combinations, and they have quite a track record and a strong, strong brand. So if you were to force my hand and say which stock of these in the horse race would you bet on, most likely it probably would be Eli Lilly, simply because of its excellent track record and its really successful launches of drugs. And once those drugs are launched, of course, then the onus is on them to communicate the value of those and, of course, negotiate with health insurance companies. So all of that add to the subtleties of picking these individual companies.
Now, drug makers have come under pressure from the Trump administration to cap how much they charge for these drugs, at least for Medicare and Medicaid patients. Should that concern investors?
Absolutely. That's one of the many factors. So, we're not just picking winners and losers in a vacuum. You have this whole regulatory issue and the fact that the Trump administration is harping on the high costs of prescription drugs. So that's another quite variable factor that is really hard to analyze, and you just have to keep on top with the headlines that, frankly, with the Trump administration, the headlines break almost daily these days, and so that adds, of course, to the complexity of picking these individual winners.
So finally, Peter, does a broad bet on the S&P 500 healthcare sector make sense, or is this a stock picker's area?
Well, it's both, actually, and I hate to answer both ways. If you have the knowledge and the expertise in biology and drug development, go have some fun picking the individual stocks. However, like the rest of us, we do not have that expertise, and I would recommend highly a basket of those stocks, but certainly have some exposure in your portfolio because it is a sector that is quite different from artificial intelligence and quite welcomed at this stage of the market.
That was Peter Andersen of Andersen Capital Management. Don't forget you can watch more videos on Reuters.com.